Imagine someone looking at you, and for a moment the world becomes quieter than usual. No music, no big words, no striking gesture, just two eyes holding on, as if time was slowing down for a moment and you could see something behind those eyes that does not lie. This tiny, fragile, barely tangible moment is the place where the unconscious speaks with complete honesty. When I close my eyes with you, I can lead you exactly there, to the edge where a man's gaze reveals what his mouth never speaks. And even if he denies it, even if he tries to control it, the unconscious always betrays itself. I will calmly show it to you, and once you see it, you will never unsee it. Before we begin, a question. Have you ever felt that his gaze did not match the words he spoke? The words said, "It's not that important, we're just friends. Don't make such a fuss," but the gaze lingered a second longer, returned when it shouldn't have, and looked away in fright when you held it. This very break is the first crack through which the truth becomes visible. For Jung, truth lies not only in what the conscious ego says, but in the play between the mask, the social role, and what the shadow wants to hide. The gaze is the boundary where the mask becomes transparent. If you feel that this stirs something in you, stay with it, because what comes now can change the way you understand yourself. Pay attention to this first, almost childlike but decisive detail. When he enters a room you are in, his gaze seeks you out before his head consciously decides to look for you. This happens in milliseconds. Not a superficial glance around, but a brief, targeted beam, as if his unconscious is performing a safety check. Are you there? Then he corrects himself, pretends nothing happened, greets, plays distraction. But he has already done it. He has located you. This automatic scanning is not politeness, it is a disguised instinct for connection. It doesn't need closeness, it happens from the doorway, from the street, even in the reflection of a shop window. And when his unconscious gets used to you, this look becomes a habit. If you doubt, pay attention to the milliseconds between his arrival and his greeting. If a brief glance comes before, you have already seen the first silent confession. He can deny everything, but the map of his eyes betrays him. The second confession is subtler. It lies not in the where, but in the how. Men's eyes, when in love, linger just a touch longer than socially usual, and at the same time fear that you notice it. The result is a stumble, a broken-off look. He breaks the gaze and immediately returns for a fraction of a second, just to check whether you noticed the turning away. Contradictory, and precisely for that reason, so revealing. He wants to hide, and at the same time for you to see. This is the old conflict between lover and warrior. The lover wants closeness, the warrior fears losing his territory. In the eyes, this back and forth shows itself, away and back again. If you notice this tiny return glance, acknowledge it quietly. His desire has no place to hide for long. The third sign lies in the invisible triangle his eyes draw on your face. Not like someone who just looks at a face, but like someone who secretly touches it. The classic triangle, left eye, right eye, mouth. A descent from the eyes to the lips and back again, as if his unconscious is rehearsing something he dares not speak aloud. Sometimes the line also goes across your chin, your cheeks, or the point between your eyebrows. Someone who feels nothing looks straight ahead. Someone who desires draws paths. Do you want to see it clearly? Stay silent for 3 seconds after you've said something important, and watch if his gaze wanders to your mouth. If this happens without you causing it, his body has spoken before he did. But yes, gazes can lie, people can deceive. That's why we go deeper, to the archetype in the gaze. A man can practice the smile, the script, the posture, but he cannot train the glow, this subtle moisture that is not a tear, this living pulse in the iris appears only when something inside comes home. Jung would say, a constellation. Your features, your voice, your gestures have triggered an inner feeling complex. He is not just looking at you, he is looking at the image of his anima that he projects onto you. The clearer this projection, the stronger the glow. Not a greedy, demanding glow, but a warm, reverent, almost grateful one. The man in love does not see you as prey, but as a place. And a place is honored in silence. If this truth is opening a new space in your mind right now, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes you recognize this place not only by the glow, but by how the gaze becomes a mirror. Notice this, when you talk about something important to you, your fear, a dream, a small success, his gaze does not wander nervously. It stays calm, and in this calm it does not lose its light. It is an attentive silence. Even the eyelids become softer. Blinking slows down, almost rhythmic, as if he wants to give you the time you never give yourself. This is not passivity, but inner calm. Here the archetype of the king appears, not in empty dominance, but in the ability to hold your feelings without overwhelming them. If his gaze in the middle of your story does not harden, does not avoid, does not close, then he quietly says to you, "Can you live a little in me?" And that cannot be easily faked. I want to tell you a scene I have seen again and again, like a collective dream. She sits with friends, he too. Lights, laughter, movement. From the other side of the room, he looks at her diagonally. No smile, no gesture, just silent attention, as if inwardly checking that everything is all right. When he sees her bend, listen, touch the glass, then someone calls him. He turns, answers, but when he returns, his head does not go back to the group, but back to her. This return glance, even if no one sees, even if he gets nothing from it, is an unbreakable thread. The unconscious has its own compass, and in the compass of a man in love, north is always visual contact. In his inner ritual, he must find you again regularly. Do you want to test it? Walk a few steps away without saying anything and see if his gaze suddenly scans the surroundings, faster, more impatient. Love has this slight panic when what is meaningful disappears from the picture, and now deeper, the gaze of the inner child. Few dare to see it, because it forces us to recognize our own tenderness. When he allows himself to like you without armor, small flashes of innocence appear in his eyes, not childish weakness, but clean vulnerability. He then looks at you with this mixture of admiration and relief, like children who finally find someone who understands them. Usually, it doesn't last long. At the first feeling of too much, he retreats into irony or control. But this moment exists, and once you see it, you never forget it. A man in love will eventually look at you with the wonder of a child finding water in the desert. This water is not loudly asked for. It is contemplated in silence, and you may wonder, how do I distinguish the gaze of mere desire from the gaze of love? Simpler, and at the same time, harder. Pure desire breaks your body into pieces which he devours with his eyes like a photo. The loving gaze, on the other hand, integrates. He takes you as a whole, even if he lingers on a detail. If he looks at your hands, he does not forget your voice. If he looks at your neck, he does not erase your story. It is an attention that does not dehumanize you. And within it lies something almost angelic. When a man loves you, his gaze, despite desire, gives you space. He does not lock you in. You notice his pupils do not harden, his forehead does not tighten as much. Even in attraction, there is a quiet yes. It is the lover reconciled with the king. Desire and respect in the same point. And then there is the phenomenon of synchronicity Jung described, meaningful coincidences that cannot be explained by pure logic. When a man falls in love, His unconscious begins to see you in symbols. He sees you in a song that never touched him before, in a color he once ignored, in an object that suddenly carries meaning. And that is why his gaze lingers longer on things that remind him of you. A book you mentioned, a gesture, a shade of color. You will notice how unusually attentive he becomes when looking at a flower stall or stops in front of a shop window, showing exactly what fascinates you. He says nothing, but his gaze lingers there, as if standing at a secret altar. And if you appear while he is having this symbol moment, his gaze will briefly flare up in surprise, as if the myth suddenly came to life. Do you want proof? There are small, silent tests that are honest without manipulation. The first, the silent mirror. When you talk, hold his gaze softly for a few seconds, without hardness, without a smile, just present. Then lower your gaze to his hands, his chest, and return to his eyes. If he adjusts his breathing, swallows, blinks anew, or his eyes welcome you brighter than before, then the connection has touched him. The second test. During a story about yourself, stay briefly silent before the important part. Watch if his eyes widen slightly, if the pupil absorbs the pause, as if it were waiting for a gift. Eyes that love listen that way. The third test. At farewell, hold the gaze a second longer, then turn away first. If in a quick reflex he throws his gaze back, he still follows you, even though he believes you no longer see it. Do not reproach him. Do not use it as a trophy. Simply notice it. Love wants to be seen, not displayed. And now, let us speak about fear. Without fear, there is no whole truth. The shadow of the lover is not contempt, but the fear of losing himself in you. When this fear takes over, the gaze does something contradictory. It acts as if you were invisible. If you look closely, you notice the excess of control, a stiff neck, a heavier blink, as if he were following a script. This forced neutrality is a trap. He must flee from precisely what he wants most. And sometimes his unconscious betrays him. In funny and beautiful ways, he avoids you directly, but looks into your reflection. Pay attention to mirrors, windows, the black screen of his phone. Where he feels safe, he allows himself to hold on to what he otherwise denies. That is his unmistakable signature. When you see it, smile inwardly. Something is happening that is greater than his performance. Imagine another scene. You are walking down a street. It is late. The conversation is light, almost trivial. Then you turn a corner. The light grows dimmer. For 2 steps, everything feels darker. In this mini-tunnel, his eyes grow larger. He glances at you from the side with a tenderness he does not show in full light. Not only because the pupil reacts to shadow, but because the unconscious becomes braver in half-darkness. The eyes in love, thresholds, stairways, doors, hallways, elevators. At transitions, roles waver. If you ever wondered, why does he look at me differently right there? Now you know. The unconscious uses the edges of the world to release truths that full daylight cannot bear. There are small details that are easy to overlook, and yet are like notes of the same melody. The pride in his gaze when you look good. The glow when someone praises you and he tries to keep his composure. The look that seeks you when he does not understand a joke, as if he wanted your translation. Or when he is asked to do something and is uncertain, as if he needed your inner direction. This is not childish dependence, but trust. His unconscious recognizes you as a point of reference, and his gaze quietly asks, "Are we in harmony?" If you have felt this, accept it lovingly. You have become part of his inner orientation system. Let us gently enter the realm of dreams. 1, 2, 3 nights after a special meeting, he dreams of windows, of trains, of clear water or puzzle pieces fitting together. He will not tell you, but something remains in his eyes, not tiredness, but quiet depth. And when he looks at you, this depth dissolves, as if the dream found its daytime image in you. In Jung's language, the self tries to bring order into chaos, and his eyes modestly show this invisible work. If you have ever experienced him more human in the morning after a day with you, that is exactly what it means. His gaze carries the echo of the dream. One could speak of widened pupils, of a raised eyebrow, of a tiny smile at the corner of the mouth. One could list all the micro-expressions, but what matters is not the mechanics, but the music they play. The loving gaze has rhythm. It is neither nervous nor lifeless. It breathes with you. When you become faster, it sometimes slows. When you grow calm, it softens. This following is not planned. It is a dance of the nervous system, and therefore, if you want to know whether he loves you, listen with your eyes. His pupils seek you in the pauses. They find you accidentally and intentionally. Do they become a little home to which he always returns? If yes, you need no more words. Everything is already said. But how do you recognize it without losing yourself? Here lies another truth. Whoever seeks signs with fear invents them. Whoever observes with presence recognizes them. Promise me quietly, while you listen, that you will not use these hints to manipulate, that you will not turn a flower into a checklist. The gaze is sacred. If you make it into a test, you desecrate it. Do this instead. Slow down your own gaze. Look less, and see more. Hold, let go, return calmly. Let your gaze be a temple that shows his gaze how to dwell. A man who loves learns the rhythm of the place he loves. If you are that place, peaceful, his eye will eventually lower its weapons. I want to give you 4 concrete moments when the loving gaze is impossible to hide. The first, the farewell. You are about to leave. Time breaks briefly. Bodies step back. And in this last instant, when everyone else is already speaking of something else, his gaze pleads silently. A soundless question. Are you really going? Sometimes you see it in a deeper breath. Sometimes in a small hesitation to return something he had already given it. If you stay half a second longer, you see relief. If you go, you see emptiness. Learn to read this edge. The second sign, the social danger. Someone crosses a boundary with you, speaks harshly or too familiarly, and his gaze becomes firm, protective. The inner lover calls the warrior to the stage. Without violence, he marks your territory. His eye says, "Not with her." He does not need to shout. The gaze draws the line. The third sign, the quiet pride. You achieve something, and he looks at you from afar, without claim, without gesture of possession. His gaze shines, his jaw relaxes. He looks at you as if you were a work of art, and he a grateful spectator. The fourth, the improvised home. He sees you sleeping in the car, laughing at something he does not understand, or absorbed in a book. No direct interaction. And yet his gaze softens in a way that cannot be repeated. They are little homes, moments when his love rests without demand. If you are still here, it means you are not like the others. You are ready to go further. Therefore, I tell you something that is rarely spoken aloud. The gaze of a loving man makes you responsible for what you do with it. Not guilty, you do not carry his biography or his shadow, but his gaze asks you for ethics. Because looking back is also an act of power. You can hold this gaze to heal or to break. You can play with his desire or honor it. What you do with these eyes becomes part of his personal myth, and also yours. Love in its mature form is not a trick of the nerves, but a decision for presence. If today you have learned to see, then let this seeing not make you harder, but softer. Let me give you a gesture at the end that will help you all your life. The next time you doubt, say nothing, ask nothing, complain nothing, stay still, breathe. Place your gaze into his, as one places a lamp on the table. No reproach, no demand, only being. His unconscious does the rest. If there is love, you will see how he seeks you with his eyes, like someone who comes home after a long journey. If there is none, this lamp will not illuminate anything. And that too is a gift, to recognize in time what cannot be shaped. Jung taught us, what we deny controls us, what we accept transforms us. Accept what you see, not to surrender, but to choose. And if choosing frightens you, remember, you can lose 1,000 things, but never clarity. Clarity remains, and today one more remains with you. The ability to read the truth in a gaze that sought you, even if it did not know how to name you. Do not use this clarity for little power games. Use it to live more honestly and more beautifully. For there is a radical beauty in true seeing and being seen. And when this beauty blossoms, everything that is not love becomes impossible. If what you just heard has opened a new space in you, guard it. Share these words with someone who needs to learn to look beyond the obvious. Let me accompany you. Subscribe so we can continue exploring the signs of the unconscious together. And write me in the comments, which gazes have you seen today that once escaped you? Sometimes writing it down is the first conscious act of seeing. And if you know someone who is confused, send him this card, not to convince him, but to light his way. For in the end, the gaze that betrays the loving man is not a trick to catch him, but a mirror that reminds you of your own worth. And when you remember, you look differently. And when you look differently, the world inevitably looks back.